I mention this many times in my stream, and it's very important. Okay, I'm going to use my Zen stick for a teaching. You can also use it for a pointer. Makes it more dramatic. All right. All right. So if we look at the Buddha's life, we can say that before the Buddha started practicing, he was very attached to name and form, just like all of us, right? We're attached to objects, we're attached to words, right? If I called you a stupid jerk, if we make that something, that means attachment, then we have some kind of dissatisfaction. Or maybe I'm attached to an object. And if that object disappears, then inside some dissatisfaction, right? If you look at any kind of religious fighting, you will find that people are very attached to the words. In one of the sutras, the Buddha said that all the different types of teaching, now he meant Buddhist teaching, but we can say any kind of spiritual teaching are like many different fingers pointing to the moon. If we're attached to the finger, we cannot perceive the moon. So you see this all the time, right? People argue because they're very attached to the finger. Oh, God is the true way. No, Buddha is the true way. What are you talking about? Allah is the true way, right? If we attach the words, we cannot perceive the moon. The moon is representing this place before thinking. So what do people do? They attach to the finger and then they finger fight, right? So you can see this and look at your family situation or political arguments, religious arguments. That means we're very, very attached to name and form. So the Buddha was also attached to name and form. That's why he left the palace. He knew intuitively there has to be something else. So along his journey, he tried many different kinds of practicing techniques and different types of meditation, and realized it wasn't really answering his great question. Because what really shook him is when he was exploring, he ran into a sick person, dying person, and a dead person. And what he saw was himself. Wow, this is going to be me someday. And then he saw a spiritual person practicing. So this made him go on his quest and search for this we call the great answer to life and death. So apparently he tried many different things and then basically gave up and sat under the Bodhi tree and just sat down and really investigated closely. What is the meaning of this life? Why do human beings suffer? What is this I anyways, right? So at some point, he perceived the northern star, so it set his mind and the star became one, and he woke up. He became awake. In fact, the definition of Buddha means to awake. So before he was very attached to name and form, and at his experience at that moment, when he perceived this enlightenment, he was no longer attached to name and form. In fact, we can say there is no name and form at that point. Okay, so attachment to name and form. Now there's no name and form. And apparently he didn't want to get up from the tree. He was enjoying this nirvana. And as the story goes, some god said, you should teach. And he said, nobody's going to really understand this. And he said, well, somebody will listen. So what did the Buddha do? He got up from the tree and he used name and form to help other people. He taught for 49 years. So we have attachment to name and form, there's no name and form, and there's using name and form. There's attachment to the stick, there's no stick, and there's using the stick. There's attachment to thinking. There's no thinking. Using your thinking. There's attachment to karma, no karma, using this karma. So this is very, very important. So before we can use anything, we have to experience this place before thinking. That's why we stress it so much in Zen practice. So there's attachment to being a Zen master, no Zen master. In fact, if I hit, right, that sound doesn't have Zen master, doesn't have Zen, doesn't have any thinking at that moment. But then there's using the title. How do we use the title Zen master to help other people? It's really important. There's attachment to this concept of I. Then we realize there's no I. Then there's using this I. So what's an attachment to this concept of I? I hate you. I want to hurt you. I don't like you. Right? We all experience this. But when we experience this point, we realize there is no I because it's before thinking. But it's very possible to use this I to help. If I say, may I help you, right? That has I in it, but the direction's very different. Okay,